Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Well, a few blessings to everyone today. My name is Jerry Tello with the Healing Generations podcast, and we're very, very blessed to invite you to journey with us today, to be with us today again. If this is your first time, or if you've been listening to the other podcast, the focus of what we do here is really bringing and watering and nurturing and acknowledging the many generations of medicine that comes in so many forms as a way of healing the many generations of pain and trauma. And we recognize today that we're experiencing a whole number of things, besides the COVID and whole pandemic of racism, and many of us are struggling too as we shelter in place and trying to figure out what's going on. And even within our own families, sometimes, we struggle. So this podcast is really about remembering, that our ancestors went through many things, and they had many tools and many stories and many aspects that helped them get through and get by and remember the sacredness and remember the hope and the faith that we could rely on. And so today, we're going to continue that dialogue, continue that prayer. And I want to begin just by thanking Creator and thanking the ancestors by whatever name you call that great spirit, whatever name you call them to you right now. Let's acknowledge the ancestors, mine, yours, and everyone's, and invite them to come journey with us today, to be with us today. Maybe they'll guide us. Maybe some wisdoms will come out from them through us this way so that you can hear. But we also want to invite the ancestors because we recognize that they've been through a lot too. And when they crossed over, maybe some of them still carried some wounds. So maybe this, what we share here today and acknowledging them, maybe they will heal a little bit. And as part of that journey, I have the honor, really the privilege of having with us today, a good friend of mine, a Baba, wisdom keeper, master drummer, musician, historian, just a good brother that's been on this road for a good number of years. We've had the privilege of sitting with him and drumming with him and singing with him and been at camp where there's been a bunch of youth and seen him bring his magic, bring that medicine to young people who knew nothing about their rooted rhythms, and saw when he played that drum, I saw the spirits jump up in those young people. And I'm talking about Brother Baba Mosheh Milon. And Baba, I'm just so happy that you're here with us today. And I'd like to just give you the opportunity to welcome the folks and say a few words.
Thank you, Maestro Jerry. So happy to been asked to be a part of this journey. I got a chance to listen to some of the other podcast speakers and presenters. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't done a podcast before, but I've done different things. Been on different programs, I've been a part of different things. And in terms of contributing, who I am. So I'm Mosheh Milon. I was actually born Alvin Milon in 1954 in Chicago, Illinois. My mother, Alithine Milon, she had 3 children. My eldest sister was named Ali Mae Milon. My sister above me was Martha Jean Milon. And I started off as Alvin Milon in Chicago, Illinois. You notice I didn't mention my father because, to be honest with you, I never met my father and I never knew his name. I never saw his picture and things like that. So even sometimes when I mention something about my father. It brings up a little bit of spirit in me, and it takes me a minute to get that kind of settled in, because I watched as growing up in Chicago, my mother care for the children and do the best she could, and she only went to the fourth grade, and she was a sharecropper in Mississippi, and she had to work with my grandmother to be able to survive and to provide for the family. And so basically, my mom being in Mississippi and coming into Chicago when the migration happened, where a lot of people was coming from the South, and they were coming into the Midwest and different cities in the South and other parts of the South, going into Atlanta and places like that from the deeper South in the Mississippi and in those type of areas. Basically, I remember the times when the way we lived was we were very poor. We didn't have musicians and artists in our family, in which, I'll begin to talk to you. How is it that I became to be the musician and the folklorist that I am without anyone sharing that kind of energy with me and my family? I say no one. I'm the only musician in my whole family. I don't know anyone else that plays music and things like that. So anyway, just to give a start to that is growing up in Chicago, going into grade school, I began to sit in the auditoriums when they had programs. And I was like maybe fifth grade. And I began to hear the drummers play. They called it drumming bugle chord at the time. They had, in this particular one, they didn't have horns, but they had drums and they had majorette. And I remember it was this guy, he used to dance around with the baton and they played the drums. And I got really fascinated. I don't know if this happens with other musicians. More than likely it does. Painters, cooks, they see something the first time and it sticks with you. And that's pretty much what happened with me. And that changed my life at such a young age, like 5 years old, and sitting with my legs crossed on the floor with the other little ones. And then the older children were in the chairs and they had these assemblies based on whatever they were doing. And we were just sitting there watching it. And then it just kept on moving from there. So once again, with no father in the house, my uncles were role models for me. And they worked with the railroad. It was two of them. And I used to go every Friday and take off to my uncle's house to get that energy of family in a different perspective, because I had two sisters and my mother. And in my uncle's house, he had several males. So, and then, moving on forward, I just began to continue to pursue interest in drumming. And some elder brothers noticed that with me and kind of, invited me into the sessions. And I would just basically pretty much sit there and watch. And when they took breaks, they would say, get up on the drum kit and just play. And so that's kind of just a little bit of history around me starting to even get a taste of what drums were. And there's so much more to come.
Yeah. It's interesting because you mentioned you saw or maybe heard that drum, and what I've noticed in talking with a lot of traditional people, a lot of people that play music, not just for music, but music becomes part of their spirit or becomes part of their character or part of their journey, is they talk about when they hear or feel a rhythm, something wakes up in them. And it seemed like you heard that drum and you saw that movement and something woke up in you, that because I also, have had the privilege of being with you when you're playing those drums, when you bring that music and something, you become something different, So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about, that time in which you really recognized that you had something in you, that there was something in you that really vibrated, if you will, that vibed with the drum, that did something to you? Because I don't want to also step over the aspect of your father not being in your life, and these other men that came into your life, maybe with that drum, that heartbeat that you missed from your father, but brought something else to you, that really resonated and brought you purpose. So maybe can you talk a little bit about, your experiences and what you remember about when you began to consciously, connect with music and the beats and the drums, from that standpoint.
Absolutely. Well, I was saying that from youngster, real early childhood type of situation at 5. And since I was so young, it was a little bit harder to get grounded, because it's almost like during those times, probably it happens now a lot as well. When you're that young, people have a tendency to not acknowledge you in those kinds of ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you interested in the drum, but you don't even know how to tell them or to express it, because you don't have the ability to express it like that yet. You haven't
Right.
grown to that level. So I used to hear bands playing in the projects. So we went from an area town that was kind of like a tenement. I remember the restrooms being on the outside. I remember it looking like how when I go to Africa almost.
Mm.
A lot of my family members there have these shanty type homes with corrugate on the roofs, and they drink out of one container with a cup on the top. They have chickens and different animals roaming around the property.
Mm-hmm.
And when they use the restroom, they pretty much dug a hole and they use it. And when it's done, they build another one and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So then during the time of around the Eisenhower time, they began to do these projects and build these freeways. And so when they wanted to build the freeway, we had to leave that area because they wanted to build the freeway through the little area we stayed. So they started building these places they call projects. And they were some of the first ones in Chicago, of course, New York and other cities. And these projects, they started out kind of not so tall at first, 6, 8 stories, and they ended up 20-some stories and things like that. So in the projects, I was a little older by this time, maybe 8, 9. I would hear the drummers and the guitar players. They had a band, and they already knew that I was fascinated with drums.
Mm-hmm.
And so the guy used to tell me, Mosheh, come on up. You can sit and watch when we play. So I would go up and sit and watch. And these were like drum kits. Mm-hmm. And these are like contemporary music more so. And so I sat down and I would listen, and then he would say, okay, we're taking a break. They would go smoke cigarettes or do whatever you're doing. And I would sit on the kit, and it became one time that he told me, hey, Mosheh, I'm getting ready to get me another set of drums. Would you like this set? And I said, yes. And he said, well, he gave me a price. I think it was like $50 for all the cymbals, this bass, the tom-tom, snare, everything. I told my mother bought this set, and then I was on my way. And then in school, I was old enough now to play in the drum and bugle corps. So it wasn't until a little while after that I began to get into the spirit of the drum. Even though it was there, I didn't know what I was feeling. I was just excited and elated by the sound of drums, the vibration going through my body. It took my focus away from being out in the projects amongst the young men that was doing different things. I was always focused on music. I never got involved with anything that was outside of something positive. And the elder brothers I never was around young men or women in my age group. They were always older. So I matured a lot faster, because if I was 8, The other guys were 15. That's a big difference in that day. So, but they knew I was serious. So when I would walk through the little gangsters and the pimps and players or whatever, I remember vividly. They used to always say, Moshe, he ain't into that. Leave him alone. Let him go. He gonna hear me. He play music. And then, of course, as we kept going, they were the ones that started telling me about my diet. And they were the ones that started telling me that, you know, you could do this and you could do that, when we wasn't getting that kind of encouragement in school, because in school, they were dealing with a lot of things that I didn't realize until later that was keeping you away from finding who your true self was, especially dealing with Native people. We had books that say, you know, that would describe the Native Americans as being, you know, something that you don't even want to think about. And that's the kind of way they deal. Of course, you know, African Americans was treated pretty bad. So in order to be into music like I was at that time, you probably would have to have some elders bringing you in. The kids at my age, it was still clowning around, playing games, bullying people. Bringing, when I got older, it began to bring drinks into school, smoking cigarettes. I never did none of that. So I would say that with the elder brothers drumming outside with the congas and the bongos and the timbales, and I hadn't even got into African drums yet. I was still into stick drums. I never even touched the drum with my hands. It was all sticks. So when they saw me that I played sticks, they invited me and said, hey, you can play sticks with us. And I said, how? What am I play sticks? I can't bring my drum kit here. He said, okay, well, you know, you can do timbales. He introduced me to timbales. So I started playing timbales while I was playing traps. So this moves me into probably that grade school level all the way up to about entering into high school. But before I went to high school, I was taking classes dealing with theory in high school from grammar school. After I got out of school, I took a walk to the high school to continue my classes.
Wow. You know, what impresses me, and I think, you know, again, we're correcting the narrative here, because I think, you know, most people think, you know, about Chicago or any inner city, inner city at that time, and even with projects, you know, they think about, you know, the homies hanging out and the OGs hanging out and bothering the kids and trying to recruit them and stuff. But what stuck with me right now that you said is even the ones that were into that stuff, they recognized your gift. They recognized that you were serious. They recognized that you had something, and they said, leave him alone. He ain't into that. You know, and I don't think people recognize that in communities, even the hard-nosed, tough communities, there are people that recognize greatness, that recognize sacredness, that respect that if you're serious. Now, if you're not serious, they're going to try and get you to come with them. But if you're serious, you know, I think people want, you know, especially the younger ones, to do better than they did. And it's interesting how, you know, when we talk about ceremony, when we talk about ancestral wisdom, we usually think about it, you know, happening in some of our traditional lands, Africa or Mexico or indigenous places, but it happened right there in the hood. You know, when you drummers got together, that was like a ceremony, and in that you were a younger person and they invited you in, come bring your sticks, come bring that rhythm and play with us. You know, is that rites of passage, that mentorship that we had in our communities, you know, that people didn't know, but we had that in our communities. But, you know, I also want to acknowledge you, because you had to choose that. You had to choose to not go off on the other end where some of your younger partners were going. You chose to invest in that discipline, because I know, I mean, at camp, when the youngsters see you play and they're like, dang, man, you're bad, you could do all of that. They don't realize that didn't just happen. You know, you invested a lot of energy, a lot of practice, a lot of your discipline into building that craft, into building that skill. You know, and that was just the beginning. You know, you mentioned that you hadn't really got into the African centered drums yet. When did that happen? When did you begin exploring that aspect of your gift?
Well, you know, what ended up happening is And I have to give some acknowledgement to back in the day with the pimps, players, drug addicts, whatever. Most of my partners was heroin addicts. The cats that I grew up with, they were young. But I used to sit there with them. They'd be shooting heroin right next to me, nodding, talking to me, and nodding at the same time. But they never tried to force anything on me, and I never did any. I never did any drugs. And they respected that I was into my music, back to what you were saying, and I have to acknowledge them for that, because one thing about the Africans that came from Africa to America, man, I know everybody should know this by now, but we suffered. Can you imagine you come here in the slave ship, not on the Mayflower, and you take everything that you knew about your ancestors, your religion, your eating, the way you went about your culture is all stripped away from you. So when the people are stripped away with their drums, are stripped away and these type of things, they tried all kind of methods to try to bring back that communication through the drums. So they did many things, just like in Brazil. You got capoeira, and you got other drums, cajones, that people play that's made out of boxes and pieces of wood. You got log drums, all kind of ways that they try to hide the fact that they were communicating through these systems. So it became a time about a little bit before 1972. I graduated from high school in 1972. And I was already doing music classes and things like that in the high school, after school programs. And then when I got into high school, I was doing band and theory and these type of things. Still, not a lot of African drums yet, except for, remember I said that I was with the guys playing on the street with the congas and stuff like that. So it's a group called Sun Drummer of Chicago. Sun Drummer Chicago, led by one of my big Babas, my first African drum teacher, called, his name was Harold Murray. He changed his name to Atukwe. Harold Murray, he's Atukwe. He lives in Atlanta now. And I imagine Atu must be close to 90 or so now. And it was him that started an organization called Sun Drummer. And the concept was that, we play under the sun and we use the sun for healing and these type of things. So it's very fascinating to me. And the fact that in Sun Drummer, we made our own instruments. We didn't buy instruments. We made all the drums that we played. That's where my drum making skills came to fruition. Along with my mother, which I didn't mention, was a upholsterer. The fact that she didn't go to school and the girls was behaving badly in the projects, they made her stay at home. They said, you have to stay at home or you're going to lose this apartment. Then they gave her some training. She went to do upholstery. She did very well, graduated, eventually worked at a company and got her own business. And then she was working with tools while I was in high school. So she's working with these tools. I'm helping her work on the wood because I was doing craft stuff at school, welding, cabinet making. So when she said, hey, Mosheh, you want to work with me and you do the wood, I do the fabric and the foam and all that. So that, along with Atukwe, is where I forged that whole crafting skills from school, mom, and Atu. So Atu was the mentor, and we had the group called Sun Drummers. So we used to drum in the community. Atu used to travel to Africa. At that time, I hadn't started traveling to Africa yet, and we'll get into that in a minute. But in around 72, I joined the Sun Drummer, along with a couple other things that I did. And we began to drum and go through the community, and we made up a lot of our own songs. And that's another thing. Coming from Africa, you don't come in here and be speaking your language. You come in and they try to force you to become Joey and Samuel and Martha and Oyin or whatever. And you don't get to be the Moshehs and Abdullah and Raoud and all that, because when you speak these names, then you know what happens. They don't want you to be a part of that. So therefore, you don't come with all the things well, you come with the things that you left with, but you can't maintain them.
Right.
So in the Sun Drummer, we did a lot of our songs in English, actually. And a few of the ones that we did come to find out about, we did in various language, Susu, Mandinka, Solokoli, Jola. We did a lot of different songs in that area. So it was the Sun Drummer Chicago that brought me in. We started making our own drums. We started to go in and find hide companies to get our own hides. And so that company is the one that I started with. And therefore, that started my pathway into African drums.
Wow. Maybe we can just take a moment right now and just listen to some of that music. Maybe we can just take a moment and right now we'll just play a little bit just to give the audience just a little bit of a taste of what you're talking about when you talk about sun drummers and that music, that combination of drumming and maybe some singing. So as we, I just wanted to give the audience just a little taste of what we're talking about in terms of music and your journey that led you into combining. And the interesting thing that you mentioned before, it's interesting how life or the creator, the ancestors send these teachers with these different skills. Your mom was teaching you about upholstery, and you're doing the woodwork. And then you got a Baba that comes in and presents an opportunity to you, and you combine all those skills, right? You combine all those skills, and now you're a master drum maker. You're a master in a lot of ways. So let's continue that dialogue and talk a little bit about your journey, your continued journey, and how the African drum and the basis of African music became so integrated in your life.
So following graduating from Paul Lawrence Dunbar in 1972, so I began my life as a professional drummer, maintaining and repairing all types of drums up until right now. And after becoming a member of the Sun Drum in Chicago, I also became a member of the Darlene Blackburn Dance Company, and took this opportunity with Darlene Blackburn to travel to Lagos, Nigeria in 1977 for a festival called Festac. And Festac, this is my first time to Africa, and that was like mind-blowing. Going to Africa with the dance company, with some of my brothers from the project that also were drummers that I grew up with. I still work with them today. And so it's a big festival of African culture. And it's kind of interesting how, as profound as it was and how much unity it brought to all the diasporas. I mean, it wasn't just people from Chicago. It's people from all over the world that came to Festac, and all cultures and all nations. And they brought all these people together in Nigeria, and they called it Festac. So basically, there we did shows. Stevie Wonder was there. I got a chance to work with Fela Kuti of Nigeria, big Nigerian star. He passed away some time ago, and all his sons now are playing music in different places around the world. And so basically that trip to Nigeria really opened up my eyes a lot to Africa, the drums, the sacred aspects. We got a chance to work with a lot of what we would consider like priests, Babalao types, marabouts that would sit you down and give you blessings, and they would give you charms to wear. They would pray over your instruments. And also during that time when we were rehearsing, a couple of the drummers from Guinea, West Africa, they were with the company called Ballet Africains. They were there also. And they heard me and my drummers, the guys playing. And when we finished, we was getting ready to take our drums over to the ladies who had food outside and they had coals burning. Mm-hmm. And during that time, we used to take our drums and put them by the heat to make them come up a little bit because we hadn't developed those techniques yet that we have today. And the one of the guys that I met, his name was Famadou Konate. He's very popular, very well known all over the world. He came over and said, "No need a heater, no need a heater." We was trying to understand what he was saying. Mm-hmm. He was basically saying, "You don't need that. Those drums sound great like that. No need no heat." Mm. Then he looked at our drums and he asked me, "How do you have those skins on it?" We had developed our own technique that they hadn't even saw before. And so we began to become friends, and I would go to Guinea to visit his village from time to time. And we had the process going, meeting a lot of different people and sharing a lot of things. And the time that I was growing up in Chicago and we wanted to play the djembe, for instance, it was no djembes to buy in America. It was none. The first person to bring the djembe drum that's from Mali originally was Laji Camara. Laji Camara is from Guinea, West Africa, and he came in with Catherine Dunham. Catherine Dunham is one of the premier dance teachers in the world. And she's in East St. Louis right now, but Catherine Dunham Dance Company, if anybody ever knows anything about that, I'm sure people that would listen would know. Catherine Dunham is the one that most teachers in America in these universities and things, they either learn from her or individuals that learn from her. And so anyway, being in Africa, it was an opportunity to get into the roots. And you can imagine getting off the plane for the first time in Africa, putting your feet on the soil. It was. I mean, that's something that I got pictures in my studio now. You could never. I mean, whatever that feeling is, it's amazing.
Tell me about that. Tell me about that feeling, and what that did to you, stepping on Mother Africa. What did that do to you, and what did that stimulate in you? What went through you?
Well, when the most of us, because our plane stopped in New York and some other cities on our way to Africa, so we was met with all other artists and whatnot. And I tell you, for the most part, when we got off of Africa, people were crying. They were on the floor kissing the earth. They were laid out at the airport on the tarmac. Just everybody just overwhelmed with emotions. And it took a while to get over that initial feeling, but it also made me realize that I did the right thing. I made the right moves. I devoted my life to music and the culture, and it was the right thing to do. Yes, did we know everything yet? No, we were still like babies in a way, and we were still learning what these ancestral drums meant and what our ancestors would have wanted us to do. So we all had made greater commitments to continue this process, and I'm still doing it today. So we brought back things from Africa, and we continue the process. I started traveling into Africa. Now I have a home in Africa, in which we'll talk more about that. And so I think everybody got more dedicated to continue the process of being involved with this ancestral work that was meant for us to have, and to pass it on to other generations, especially the youth, and to make sure that we have someone to continue this path. And that's one of our big problems now. Because even some of the programs I work in now, they target older young men. And my feeling, because I work with children from 3 years old all the way to elders.
Wow.
Disabilities, all nationalities, LGBTQ, everybody. And you know, you learn, because growing up in Chicago, it was segregated. I didn't even have a white friend till I moved to California. And I was like 32. That's crazy. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, we human beings on the earth. And if you think about even Latinos, I didn't have no Latinx friends. It was so segregated, we didn't get the opportunity to learn from each other. So I had to like re-up all that I didn't get coming to California, because California, actually, you could see the people were more integrated. They were interrelated. So getting off the plane just reinforced the fact that we have to continue this work. We have to continue this work and make connections and find out more about the history of our ancestors in this work, and to dedicate ourselves to, like, you know, moving forward in it.
You know, it was like you came home, like your spirit came home, and all the ancestral spirits welcome you back. I mean, and it's beautiful what you said, that it validated that you did the right thing, that the journey that you took, the sacrifices you make, all the because, you know, I know being a musician, there's a lot of practice you got to, you know, go through. You know, it doesn't just come to you like that. You know, you got to practice, you got to put some hours in, you got to put some time in. And you know, and it seems like when you got there, there was a blessing that says, you know, you're on the right path. The other thing that impressed me is that what you said too. Now there's a commitment that you got to make. You got to pass this on. You got to learn more. You got to share more. And I think, you know, that powerful commitment that you've been on is, you know, has been amazing. You know, share with us a little bit about you know, those experiences, because you mentioned now you have a home there, right? You have a home in Africa, and so I imagine that you have really strong connections with some of the Babalawo, some of the elders there, some of the, you know, not only just in music, but just in that homeland as well.
Yeah, well, I continue researching and studying the drums, and it was another teacher that came to Chicago named Suleiman Diop. Suleiman Diop is one of my first teachers for the Kutero drums. That's a Mandingo drum from the Senegambia region. And he came, and he was with the Ballet du Senegal, from Senegal. So they used to tour and come into the States in different countries, and I got a chance to see them, just like I was telling you about Ballet Africains. So he got introduced to the company I was working with, that I was the music director of, called Muntu Dance Theater. This is a different theater that I hadn't mentioned yet, because I work with so many different groups and organizations, and Muntu Dance Theater started with its name UHCC. That meant Unifying Humanities through Cultural Creativity. We decided to that name because we was trying to unify people through the culture. We didn't even have a place to practice. We practiced outside like they do in Africa. We was outside. We played by a tree, and then eventually we got a little place, a storefront, and so forth and so on. So Suleiman, he was the one that's playing the Kutero. So I began to learn the Kutero from him. And then eventually I got a contract coming into California. When I got that contract coming into California, it was for the Olympics, in 1984 Olympics. And I was working with a group in Los Angeles called Maury Nimber. It was an African dance company. I was teaching her drummers some different things and working with them in the Olympics, entertaining the guests, doing shows and things like that. It was the next year that I actually moved to the Bay Area after that. And so studying the Kutero, moving around a little bit, I ended up traveling back to the Gambia and looking for a teacher called Fabakari Baji. He was a Tantan Jaliba. He was in Brikama in the Gambia. And I never talked to him before. I never seen I seen a picture of him in a magazine. It was a friend of mine here. He's a Babalao named Yakbe Onilu. Him and I decided we're going to go and find this guy in Africa. Now you imagine, we just know he's in Brikama. We get on a plane. We go to New York, hang out with my friend Sule. We get on a plane. We go to Senegal. We stay in Senegal a while. We meet other Jalibas there, but we were specifically trying to find this one in Gambia. I mean, the journey was amazing. Getting down, hiring you a driver, driving a whole day through the rugged terrain of West Africa. And we get to Gambia late in the night. We come to this compound. The people haven't gone to bed yet, but it's like 9 o'clock, whatever, at night. Mm-hmm. And this guy looks at us like, who are these people? And we say, I'm Mosheh, this is Yakbe Onilu. We saw your magazine. We heard about you. We came to see you all the way from California. So when and of course, we don't speak the same language. We have an interpreter. And when he welcomed us, and this guy, he actually got his drummers together that night.
Whoa.
That night, he got his drummers together, and he played for us, and we were using the lights from our rider, the driver, to light up the place so we could even see him. They didn't have no electricity, no toilets, none of that. It was just totally bush. And he had put the lights on, and we was drumming. And that kind of started me in this Mandingo culture, in which, Baba, when we come together, I never introduced that kind of drumming, because it's almost like playing bata. You have to really be serious. It's kind of like, it's a family drum. Each drum is related to the other. It's not like a jam session. You have to actually know the language and understand how each drum talks to the other one. And that's why African music, and not just African music, but musics of various cultures, is so profound. And that's why today, the attention it takes to do stuff like that is different when you got a cell phone and all the other things that's distracting you. So, and then you have to have a relationship with the people that you're playing with. You can't be in a disharmony. You have to be in harmony with the people you're playing with. Wow. Because you relate and rely on them for the beats that they're making for you to accompany those beats. And so that started my trip. And that was my first trip to Africa, but that started my interest in thinking about what it would look like for me to have my own property there. What it would look like for me to actually be able to come to my own land in Africa. And that started my journey. So I would go back to the States, come back, I'll go back again. And I'll go back. I did that 5 or 6, 7 times. Then I got to a point that I met someone there that I fell in love with. And I began to help them in a way. And sometimes the way we were doing then, it could have been a lot of things involved with that situation. It could have been the desire to help. It could have been the being thankful for the support while you're there. And when you put it all together, it ended up that I brought Kaditamba, which is my son's mother, to the States. And while she was here, she got pregnant with him. I continued my journeys back and forth. I would send her back. And one day I went back and found a land. And I found that land. I paid for the land. And then I didn't do anything with the land for a year or so, went back and started building little by little and continuing my studies, and also going to other countries, the Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, Burkina Faso, Guinea, of course, Senegal. I was going to Nigeria again, Ghana. I was just constantly moving around, learning different things as I went down there.
Wow. It's a couple of things that I think that really reinforce that the ongoing culture that remains, and you telling that story that you went to look for this Baba, and even though it was 9 o'clock at night and you showed up in the dark, them not knowing who you were, because of the cultural significance, because of that family connection, because of that spiritual connection, he welcomed you with the drums. He welcomed you all. You know, and I think many times we don't recognize that in spite of everything that African-rooted people have gone through in this world, and especially in this country, how those traditions and rituals and sacred ways are still present. And, you know, like recognizes like, brother recognizes brother, family recognizes family. And he saw you too and welcomed you in with those drums, you know. And to me, you know, I didn't want to pass that by, because we may just think, oh, that's just that's something special. When you show up someplace, I mean, you guys travel a long way. You had to have a lot of faith,
Absolutely.
a lot of wish, a lot of hope, a lot of vision, you know, that you would follow your spirit, not knowing even where you were going, if you're going to meet this person or not, but allowed, you know, the inspiration of wanting to continue, if you will, this medicine, and you get welcomed that way, you know, and that seems like then the next phase of your journey where then you decided to you know, to have land there, to call that part of the world part of your home, and you know, so you know, I these teachings that come, and I think, you know, it is that rhythm, it is that drum, it is that beat that, you know, took you all across the world, right? Because you traveled every place, you know, Baba. And you know, I want to wrap us up for this segment right now, and we're gonna have the privilege to continue with Baba Mosheh again for another session. But I want to wrap this up and ask you just to share as we close for today. You know, what is it? What did you learn in that visit, in which that Baba gathered those drummers, welcomed you in? What did that do? I mean, especially because you didn't have a dad, and this man that didn't know you from no one welcomed you in like you were a relative, like you were a son. Tell me about that as we close today, because I think what I really want to let people know is, in spite of everything that we're going through, there's certain things that are so important. And one of those things is our relationship. And you mentioned that, our relationship. You even started a dance group that really was, or a music group that was focused on bringing all people together. So as we conclude, I want to conclude with what came to you in that visit as a teaching, you know, for the people that are listening.
Well, I think what I gained from that, as well as things that I think about today, is community, family, village. They always say from time to time it takes a village to raise a family. So when I traveled through West Africa, coming from Senegal, arriving in Casamance, which I didn't mention, and those people also never seen me before. They took the drums out. I got photographs of it, music from it. They realized why we were traveling, what we was about. They got the ladies together. They made food for us. They got the drummers together. They played for us. Even one of the most profound things that I think one of my friends, the Babalawo, saw in that particular trip, in which we did many, and we also added many other artists and interesting people on our journeys, up to about maybe 10 or 12 at a time, is he always references to, he bought a Coca-Cola once in Casamance. And it was about 12 people who took a sip of that Coke. You know, you feel me? He was like, he always say that to me. Moshe, you remember I had that one Coke and I shared it with the people. Then one took a sip, gave another one a sip. They all liked it, but they couldn't afford to buy them. So he was that one sip, one sip, one sip, one sip, one sip. They made the food, they played, they were happy. Then you traveling on. and you get to other parts that's got these stops that you make. People are very friendly, and the drums have a way of being like that. If you ever see a child, you could take a kid to a music store. It's all kind of instruments there: pianos, horns, flutes, all kind of banjos. The thing that I always notice about a child, they always go to the drum. Mm. The drum is just so friendly. I'm not saying that the other instruments not is important. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the vibration of the drum. Mm. When you play one note on the drum, it gathers your attention, and it connects with your heartbeat, and it connects with your ancestors in a way that even right now I can't explain. Yeah. I just know that it brought me, like we said earlier, it brought my attention to, what is that? And it also it does the same thing to everyone, whether they want to deal with it or not, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. When you hear drums, you go that way. That's and right. See, even in Africa, in Gambia, I remember that we would hear drums, and I would tell the people that was hosting me, can you take us to the drums? So we start walking. Mm. We go where we hear the drums, and then all of a sudden the drums is in another area. Mm. And then we go walking that way. Mm. Then the drums go to a different area. And they explained to me that was the gene. That's the spirit. Mm. It's actual, they said it's a whole society of spirit that if you see them, usually either you're going to be rich or go crazy. That's what they used to tell us. If you see them, because I have stories that the Jolly Bars tell us too, about them playing drums for ceremonies and everybody walking down. You see these whirlwinds picking up, and sometimes you can get caught in them, and they call it the devil. Mm-hmm. Now, either you could be good or bad. So I would say that, I think the drum, the love, the family, and how we use that to heal and bring ourselves together. It's our communication device. It's the things that kept us understanding what's in our path, what's ahead of us. We communicated with this device from village to village. And believe me, the people that don't want it, they hate it. They don't like the drums. The drums is too much love. Mm. All my teachers say that word, love. Drums is love. Mm. And it brings people together. So I would say that everybody should have a drum in their house. At least one.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we're going to pick up next time. We're going to pick up about that, how, that drum, that heartbeat that you mentioned, can bring us back to that love and the interconnection between all of us, and there's so much more. And we're going to pick up this conversation, next week on next week's podcast, but I really want to just, for all those people who are listening, I just want to just acknowledge the privilege that we have sitting here with Baba Mosheh, because it's not often that we listen to someone that has so much experience, that has so much spirit, that has so much love. And you feel it. I felt it. I've had the privilege of sitting and feeling that drum and hearing that drum heal me. And I've had the privilege of sitting with Baba Mosheh when there's a bunch of young people around, and they all want to play that drum. They all want to drum. They all want to drum. And I've seen the magic. And we're going to talk about that next time. We're going to talk about the magic that Baba Mosheh I've seen happen when he brings young people in a circle. Young people that they say they got attention deficit, can't pay attention. No. He sit them in a circle, give them a drum. They listen to him. And after that session is over, these young men are changed. So, I want to thank you, Baba, and we're going to pick this up next time. For the audience that is listening, I want to just, have you think about the teachings and the lessons that we heard today. Where is your drum? What is your rhythm? What is that beat that keeps you close to your heart, to that love? What is your music? What is your rhythm? And if you don't have one, recognize that you do have one, and and that you need to have it close to you. And maybe part of your journey is recovering your drum, recovering your music, recovering your song, because it brings healing and it brings peace not only to you, but it can be to your family and to the world as well. We want to thank you for listening today, and write a review, share this podcast with other people, and listen next week, because we're going to pick up right here with Baba Mosheh to hear about the healing medicine of the drum. Thank you very much, and may you have a blessed day.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.